we have the man himself, John Pope. Thanks for coming down and taking the time to have a chat to us.
No problem. Thank you so much for having us here in the Grand. It's been such a great joy to play here.
That was a great set, and I know that it was a lot more improvised than normal, but that was brilliant. I loved it, and everybody in here. There's not many of us here, but we all loved it. Did we all love that? There we go.
Bless you. Thank you so much for having us. It's been a joy. It's been really lovely.
That's
really
great.
Lovely.
That's great. We've had one or two comments as well you might be interested in while we've been
I love the reviews. Give me the reviews.
Emma Johnson.
Oh.
She said, prior to the gig, can't wait to hear John Pope. What a great set of musicians, basically, it was. And then during the performance, really beautiful.
Oh, bless her. Everybody remember to go and check out Emma Johnson's music as well. Emma Johnson's Gravy Boat, fantastic band.
Tomorrow afternoon. Emma Johnson's Gravy Boat, that's correct. And she'll be on here doing the same set, actually, at 5 p.m. Awesome. No, 5 p.m. tomorrow. No, 4 p.m., same set this year.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Also one from Kev as well. Kev Mather, really enjoying it. Thank you very much, John Pope.
Bless you, Kev. Thank you so much.
It was great. Right, so it was a different set today, slightly different.
Quite different from usual, yeah. I mean, obviously we haven't played very many sets for the last little while because of the situation as it stands, yeah. But we did get a chance to play at the Globe in Newcastle in February, which was kind of the album launch gig for the record that we just put out, in lieu of there being a tour and anything like that. And that set drew much more on the record. You know, there's a lot of different sort of styles of music on that, and it's generally... It's a lot more written, obviously. There's some composed elements to it. But even then, like my practice as a musician and as a band leader has always been to try and keep things as open as I can get them and leave as much room for improvisation and discovery as possible. And in a situation like this, where you're trying something different, you've got new musicians sort of slotting into it, and you know, you're kind of keeping that core of improvisation kind of there, you know. You sort of have to put your money where your mouth is and go, all right, let's really improvise. Let's really, really, you know, see where we can get to if we take all of the little bits and pieces that we would normally lean on out of the way and go, we're just listening and we're here for it.
It's kind of like a journey when you don't know where you're going, I suppose, isn't it?
Definitely.
Like the normal set would be taking you on a musical journey, but this time you're not quite sure where you're going with it.
Yeah, we don't know where we're going either.
That would be the difference, I suppose.
Definitely.
But it certainly worked, and it was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
That was really good. I mean, in terms of when you've got the full quintet, how much for the viewers? How much does that change from what you've done style-wise? You say
there's a little bit more of a lean into kind of hard bop and 60s. The 60s avant and free jazz thing is still there all the time, because that's my home base. That's the music that I really love. But we tend to have a little bit more in terms of, you know, there's some more riffs, there's some more stuff which sort of has a groove to it, but even then, like, you know, I like to leave windows open for strange music to get in. So it's different in terms of those things that you might see there. But then some of the tunes that we played today are from that release as well.
Right, yeah.
Deliberately picking ones that are a bit more ballady, a bit more open, and that you can kind of do things with. And I knew, you know, Faye and Johnny are regular members of the core band, so they're there all the time. And a chance to play with Graham in front of people, I've been looking for it for ages, and he's such a fantastic listener and improviser with all of the people that he works with. Check out his record as well, By and By, I believe it's called. He's going to kill me if I don't get the name of it right. Well, if the Graham South Quartet, check that out.
The Graham South Quartet,
that's
okay.
The one.
Yeah,
his own band is really, really fantastic.
Yeah.
But getting all of those players together and knowing that we can improvise together, and knowing that we can lean into each other's styles and sounds is just part of the process and the joy of working with musicians for a long time. I mean, Faye and I worked together in a whole bunch of contexts. Johnny and I, when Johnny agreed to be in this band when I first set it up, I knew he would be the right pick. I've been a big fan of his playing for a long time. And
me too.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Really incredible. And having that as a kind of core to lean on makes a situation like this that much more, I don't want to say safe, because safe is the wrong word. You know, you want it to be an exploration and you want there to be some challenge in there, but you feel comfortable, you feel prepared to step forward with these people and trust them. Yeah. So that's a really cool space.
I mentioned it earlier as well. Graham and Johnny play in Johnny's quartet
That's right,
as well,
yes,
which isn't too dissimilar from your quintet.
Definitely not. Yeah,
there's no chord instrument involved, so you got the rhythm section, bass and drums, and the horn section.
I love that sound. I really love that. Yeah. And Johnny's quartet was actually, you know, I saw that band in a few different lineup configurations that he's had, and I've always really loved his approach in that. But for me, it goes all the way back to, I mean, the quintet, as it started, my own band with my own name on it, started as an Ornette Coleman tribute project for Jazz Northeast years ago, and it was always that thing of like, we don't have a chord instrument, it's all horns, it's bass and drums, it's very simple. And for me, that goes all the way back to Ornette and the Mingus at Antibes album, which I don't know if people know that one as much as some of the other Mingus records, but it's this killer set from 1960, I think, at Antibes Jazz Festival, and people aren't ready. There's a guy, Eric Dolphy does a huge bass clarinet solo on What Love, and people boo at the end of it because it's just so out there. And everyone, what is this? I just love it. I listen to that.
I mean, Paul mentioned before the Ornette Coleman influence early on. I don't know if you heard him when we were talking earlier.
A little bit as we were walking in,
Yeah. I mean, what I tend to find is when you haven't got a chord instrument, it makes the audience listen a bit harder, but then you get drawn in more. Because, like you said, there's more space to leave to your own imagination.
Definitely,
and that really works. And again, today that really worked.
Oh, thank you.
I thought.
I think it does something about the way that people listen to the music. You know, people are used to hearing jazz lineups of a certain type. You know, they're used to hearing pianos, guitars, a couple of horns, bass and drums, sort of sitting there and. You know, that there's plenty of amazing music made with those sorts of lineups, but it does something when you have a kind of comping chord instrument. It sort of it's like putting wallpaper up of a specific type, and it gives you this. You know, you walk into that space and you go, "Oh, I know what this space is like." But when you take that away and that's not there, and people really have to lean in, like you say, and discover what's going on because there's nothing to sort of sit on, and it means that the job of the bass and drums kind of ramps up in intensity because you really have to hold things together. Yeah. And actually the chord, when the quintet is here, it's a little bit more evident when the quintet's here because I write sort of parts across those voices. Yeah. So there's quite a bit more stuff where you can hear definitive chord sequences, but they're being hinted at with horns rather than stated loudly with piano or guitar. And that space really interests me as well.
Absolutely,
so there's a lot of stuff to be found in there, but it just requires everyone to listen in the band as well. You need to key into each other that much more.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, we saw you last year at the Lancaster Jazz Festival.
I know
there's quite a few of us of the committee went up there, and that was the first time we saw you, and that was great. And funnily enough, I do remember Kev was there as well. They give you the compliments early on.
Excellent. And, thank you so much.
That was good. So last year, obviously, has been tough for all of us, musicians and anybody involved with music and events in that industry. How have you kept yourself busy in that time?
Well, it's been tricky. It's been up and down trying to find ways to keep myself busy. Luckily, I mean, I mentioned during the performance that Wesley Stevenson, who's a long-term friend based in Newcastle and is he's the chief programmer and curator for the Newcastle Festival of Jazz and Improvised Music, and also he works with Jazz Northeast, who I've had a long relationship with, being based in Newcastle. And he came to me and said, "Look, I can't put the festival on this year, obviously, but I have some other funding, I have some other sources to do some things. I've been thinking about putting a record label together for ages. Do you want to be on it?" And that was a real anchor point for me to sort of go, oh, right, if I'm going to do this, because I've been meaning to make a record with this band for a while, but things keep getting in the way. You know, we were touring in 2019, and I wanted to do it at the end of that, but everyone is in different bands, everyone's busy. We were going to do it in the winter, and then some family commitments got in the way. You know, this kind of thing is always happening, and you sort of go, oh, well, we'll put it off a few months. It's fine. And then we got to the beginning of 2020, and we put it off a few months. Snap, and you're not going anywhere for the next 14 months. But luckily, in the little sliver of activity in the middle of the year, we were able to sort out some recording dates. And if it hadn't been for Wes coming forward and saying, here's a chance, I'm going to help you, I'm going to give you a forum to do this in, you know, so you don't have to do it completely DIY. You don't have to find your own funding, your own money to do it. You know, we'll work together and make something happen. So huge props to him that I got that even happening. And then, you know, bits and pieces of playing in small, socially responsible sort of settings as much as we can. The band that I play in with Faye, which is her led jazz rock, alt jazz rock genre blending amazing band, Archipelago.
Go on, give that band a plug. Who is that band?
Archipelago, which is led by Faye McCalman, and that I play electric bass in. I love that group. It's so good, and we've been working on new music for quite a while, and we got a chance to record that in December last year, and I don't know how much I can talk about things. Am I allowed to talk about things? All right, okay. I'll keep it. There's something coming out at some point.
Watch
I don't know if we can talk about dates yet, but we did some recording, and eventually that's going to appear, which we recorded in Sunderland in December just gone. Little things like that, but I mean, I don't teach really. I don't do any of that kind of online stuff, and I know so many musicians who've pivoted to being, exclusively online teachers, online session players, working in that sort of thing. For improvisers, I've seen some really inventive responses to it, but for me, it's not the same. Like improvising in a virtual space with people can be great. I've seen some wonderful work being done like that, but for this band, and for me as a musician, I don't work with it like that. I have to be with people to make it really be what it needs to be.
To make it happen,
I think so.
I mean, you're about the teaching. You're correct. I think so many musicians have had to try and adapt to the online lessons. Me myself as well, because last year I was teaching and we moved everything online, and it was tricky at first, but after a while I kind of got the hang of it.
That's good.
I think the biggest issue with teaching online and with anything online really is there is that slight delay. So you can't play together, you can't improvise, you can't do anything at the same time because of that reason. So
it's a challenge.
All your teaching has to be geared towards get that out of the way, because when you're teaching, often you play together and that's what you do. But
it gives you a chance to find other things, right? You can start talking about, maybe you can't play together, but maybe you can talk about tone. Maybe you can talk about other things to look at music. I mean, I've listened to so much more music in the last year than I even did before. Because frequently, if I was sitting down to give dedicated listening time to something, it might have been to learn it for a gig or to sort of dissect it for my own practice or whatever. Listening to music for pleasure had sort of, like I just did it as a background thing without really paying attention that much. Yeah. And, that's been cool. I've read a lot of books, got into reading books again. Going outside, I was never an outside person.
Really? Yeah.
Ever. I always... Such a homebody, don't even want to go near the outdoors. But now I need trees. I've got to be amongst trees. Otherwise, I'll lose my mind.
When you have to stay home and you're allowed to go out for 20 minutes to exercise, you've got to do it, haven't you? Even if you don't normally do it, you've got to do it. Just because.
My word. Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure.
I started, even myself did some exercise last year, and then 20 minutes I had to go out and I had to force myself to do some exercise, And I had to do that to get rid of the beer belly, to be honest, so that did help a little bit.
Everyone's put on a little bit of lockdown weight, I'm sure. Anyone who tells you they haven't put weight on lockdown is fibbing. For sure. Are
you a fan of online gigs? Have you watched many live streams?
I have watched some really nice online gigs. I haven't made a huge habit out of it, mostly just because I have other things going on where I'm kind of I'm diverted in my attention, and part of me misses it too much if I watch loads and loads of online gigs. I miss the feeling of being around, because it's also where a lot of my social life is.
Yeah, of course.
You mentioned Lancaster Jazz Festival, like. As a festival like that, where I've been a few years in a row and I know the team quite well, and I'm there with different projects. I look forward to that every year, not just for seeing music, but for seeing friends. So that side of it, I feel like I feel the pinch of that a little bit if I watch lots and lots of online stuff. But having said that, I think there's some people out there again who've really made it work well for what they do.
Any name dropping? Anybody in particular you've impressed?
I will drop two, because I think they're two, and they're both festivals. I think these are both examples of either side of the coin, if you like. So London Jazz Festival, who very graciously had me as part of their Serious Take 5 artist sort of showcase. They did as close to a traditional festival online as they could. They had things sort of spaced out in different ways so that you could catch something at the end of something else, but it felt like a program where there was a lot of stuff on in different places that you could go to. A little bit like if you were in, a festival like Lancaster, or I guess London Jazz Festival as well, if you're going between venues, catching things, it's a full program. And it was all on YouTube, and it was all quite traditionally presented. It was all, here we are in a venue, nicely filmed, nice audio, a couple of different camera angles. There you go, jobs are good. And the lineup that they had for that was really, really cool. I saw a bunch of great stuff, Laura Jerd with Ruth Goller and Corey Dick doing Ornette Coleman music, Shabaka with the Barbican thing, a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So that was quite a traditional festival online.
Yeah.
On the other side of the coin, Tusk Festival, which is a festival of sort of experimental and lo-fi, noisy stuff. They also do a lot of jazz. It's a really hard festival to describe because it's one of these very eclectic lineups. They've had a relationship with the Sage Gateshead in Gateshead for the last 3 or 4 years, I think, and that's usually where they program their work. And it's always again, it's kind of a traditional festival in person. But when they put their online program together, Lee, the director, and the rest of the team sort of thought, well, there's no reason, if people are sending us videos to put on, there's no reason why it has to be a gig. It could be anything. So their programming was wildly different. And they've got a big archive of stuff as well. So they're pulling from their own archive of things, putting gigs on that are maybe 4 or 5 years old from the series that they've done, sort of highlights of the brand, if you like. And then they've got, they had the orchestra playing in like in a church hall. It looked like somewhere in the States, followed by just a guy in his bedroom playing oud, followed by an audio-visual representation. There was a Matana Roberts audio-visual piece, which was sort of made with multiple exposure film with audio, and it doesn't have to be live that you're performed there. It's also like a sort of art object. So that was like a really artistic response to the question of how do we put on an online program that looks really good. So I think, I think there are as many good approaches to it out there as there are artists who are keen to do something. And I hope, to some degree, it sticks around because I think it's forced a lot of places who've operated in one way for a long time to re-examine how they put things together. And the same is true for me as a musician. I've been really thinking about the way that I work and the things that I want to do when we come back. And, I think all of the opportunities to examine how we as a sector operate that have come out of being locked down and being unable to operate in the traditional ways. I hope a lot of it sticks around because I think there's some good lessons to be learned about work, and on an artistic end too.
I mean, it's the same with us, and exactly having to do an online festival where we've never done one before. It's been a steep learning curve, for all of us, really, I suppose, hasn't it? And but somebody made the good point about maybe the live streaming could continue in the future, even when live gigs continue as well, even when they start to, return. Because of course, the one thing that live stream gigs can do is they can reach anywhere across the world, can't they?
Exactly, yeah. And anyone who might not be able to make it to a venue for whatever reason, maybe you don't have a lot of money, maybe the accessibility of the venue is difficult for you. Maybe there's any number of reasons why the traditional model for gigs and for presentations are, they're great. I miss them. I really want them back in the way that they were. But there's stuff about the way that it worked that live streaming can be a solution to.
It can help.
It can really help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, about the distance, you can watch things from all over. There are a couple of things that I've tuned into for the last year that I've never really watched before is some of the New York guys.
Right.
Emmett Cohen's Monday night session is brilliant, really and the Smallers venue in New York. They do gigs every day, 2 or 3 gigs every day, and
amazing.
That's been really good as well. And I would never have seen that if I hadn't been staying up late.
There's a couple of musicians I've talked to as well who've said that they've done that. Like they've reached out to. I did it a little bit with an artist that I'm like a big fan of, the bass player Tim LaFave, and I didn't reach out for a private lesson for him, but he did a bunch of online workshops, and I was like, I'll go to this. Spend $30 and hang out with Tim LaFave for an hour, and it was great, And I've spoken to plenty of musicians. Graham was just telling us before about having online lessons with like Ralph Alessi and Dave Douglas and all like these amazing New York players, and it's like, wow, you can do that now,
Yes.
It's not just that you can do that, it's that people have realized it's viable on all ends. So all of these great musicians that you normally wouldn't have access to as a player, as a learner, they need $50 as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And the other thing I've noticed, you probably noticed yourself, when we first started with the doing with the live streams at the beginning of lockdown, everybody was doing it on their phone, and it was all kind of okay.
Yeah.
And then before long, it soon people started to realise, well, actually, if I buy this piece of kit and buy this piece of kit, I can actually make it sound really good. So people themselves have kind of adapted, and live streaming always is, there are some excellent ones that
there's some really really good ones. But you can also do, you can do good things with it on a budget as well, which I think is quite nice.
Yes,
If you do want to do something which is your own, you've got an option.
Yes,
if you're
true,
if you're a DIY artist of some sort
Yeah.
and you can stream with nice audio and nice video, although I think nice audio is more important.
Yeah,
I think a little
yeah,
bit.
for sure,
If you
yeah,
get
yeah.
really good sound, then people tend to forgive a little bit of slightly shonky
Yeah,
video
of course,
if the
yeah.
sound is really good. But if you can do that from your own space, if you've got a room at home that's quiet enough to do that from, and you've got a good enough internet connection, then you can reach fans. You can make that a thing that you do. I think there's a lot to be negotiated about how it works, and especially as the ongoing conversation about streaming revenue and all that kind of stuff kind of unfolds. But I think as a net positive for how we as artists think about how we work, I think there's lots of cool stuff in there.
Yeah.
And we're going to be unpacking it for years after the pandemic is gone, I think.
That's right.
It's made a huge difference, a huge effect.
We're gonna have to move on shortly, but just before we do, a couple of things. First of all, any merchandise, CDs, anything like that? Where can we access? Where can we find?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to find out more about me, for starters,
Yeah.
you can go to johnpopebass.co.uk. John Pope Bass is all one word. You can find out all the information about the projects that I do, some more stuff about the various things that I'm involved in there. And from there, you can also reach my Bandcamp page. My Bandcamp page is johnpope.bandcamp.com. And then you can get the album Mixed with Glass there. I've just put a record out through the same label with a trio called Telemac, which is me and Paul Hessian and the legendary Joe McPhee on trumpet and tenor sax, which is pretty wild. That was recorded in Newcastle at Wes's Festival a few years ago. And there's a whole bunch of other things on there. That's some more DIY ad hoc things that I put out. I like to have a platform where I can put out sort of experimental things, just sort of muck about and put things out with some other great musicians. But there's one there with me and Chris Biscoe. There's one there with Faye and I and a laptop coder called Shelly Knotts. There's one with a violin duo, me and a violinist called John Garner, who's a fantastic musician from up there. There's all kinds of music with my name on it in some way or another that you can get there. And if you want to follow me through the socials, it's at Bass Pope, all one word.
Bass Pope.
Bass Pope on Twitter and Instagram. So go there and you'll find me.
Oh, just one thing. I did
Please.
forget. I know we're a bit short for time, but I must have to ask you about tarot cards. You did say ask me later.
Cool. What do you want to know?
You said if you want to know about tarot cards, ask me later.
Tarot cards are, that's one of the things that I've discovered through lockdown. I was interested in tarot a little bit before then, just on a fun level. But when lockdown happened, I don't know, I went mad for a minute and decided I was going to buy a whole lot of tarot books and a couple of different decks. And now people know that I like it, so they buy me decks when they see me. It's like, oh, hey, did you like this kind of thing? And I don't you can believe in it or not in terms of the mystical property of it.
I wasn't so sure if it was helping you to choose the set list selection.
Oh, right. Well,
what mood shall we have now?
It is kind of that. It is kind of mood. And even when you use it, I mean, we could talk about tarot forever, but even when people use tarot in divination or whatever you want to call it, I think a lot of it is to do with mood and intuition. And actually, as an artist, as a storytelling, improvising artist, I think they're very linked because it's kind of about stories and characters in stories and stories that we tell ourselves. And this is all stuff which it's all brand new. I'm sort of finding my way into this as we get into lockdown, so that's floating around in the back of my head, maybe to show up as some form of music. I don't know yet. This is all very, very early stages thinking. But yeah, that's the deal with the tarot stuff.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. It's been an
so
absolute pleasure, insightful, interesting, and it's been great to speak. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.